Max Verstappen has scored loads and loads of wins in his career, but there's one that defines what Supermax is all about. This particular race was in a season without the best car, technical issues and a major setback, which forced him to take a completely different approach. Let me take you back in time to a race at Red Bull's home ground in Spielberg, surrounded by mountains, where the bull rages and a sea of orange makes the atmosphere electric. The race I'm talking about is the 2019 Austrian Grand Prix. I'm Wimbo. Here's 3 seconds to leave a like. In 2019 we saw Hamilton and Bottas dominate, winning every race before the Austrian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton had only finished in P1 or P2 so far. Ferrari had 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel and 22-year-old Charles Leclerc in their cars. Vettel, who dominated with Red Bull years ago, found his career declining. Charles Leclerc was a rising star, but hadn't won a race yet. Their package was fast. The reason for that speed is something we'll talk about later on in this video. The Red Bull lineup was a bit of a rocky situation in those days. Daniel Ricciardo had made the brilliant move to Renault, and Helmut Marko had the amazing idea to drop Pierre Gasly in there. He had made his debut 2 seasons earlier in Toro Rosso. It was the start of a merry-go-round in that seat beside Verstappen. More about the Frenchman later. The car Red Bull designed was the RB15. It was the first package with the Honda engine after they had dropped the unreliable and slow Renault engines. Aston Martin wasn't a Formula 1 team yet, they were Red Bull's title sponsor. So they were called Aston Martin Red Bull Racing at the time. It sounds so weird now, doesn't it? Now that Aston Martin has their own amazing F1 team. They started working together in 2016 on the Valkyrie project, and that grew into that sponsor deal. Max Verstappen scored a few P4 finishes in the races before Austria, but in Spain he scored a podium. He finished P3 and it was the first podium for Honda since 2008. One of the reasons Ricciardo left was because he didn't have much faith in Honda after the debacle with McLaren a few years earlier. Oh, how wrong he was. Pierre Gasly struggled a lot and was later replaced by Alex Albon. But in Austria he was still in that seat beside Max. This was in the days that Helmut Marko still had a say in driver lineups. Before the famous power struggle at the top of Red Bull. Those were simpler times. Anyway, that's a bit of information before we start to dive in this amazing race. The 2019 Austrian Grand Prix was the first race after the most boring race ever in France. That race was perhaps the low point in the whole hybrid V6 era, but people forget quickly and think F1 is boring now sometimes. The race in Spielberg needed to be better for the sake of the sport, but nobody expected a banger like this. The pole position was for Charles Leclerc after he put in a mighty lap in Q3 on Saturday. This is where the Max win to Leclerc's pole ratio started. Alongside him on the front row was Max Verstappen, and in P3 we have Bottas with Hamilton on the second row. Sebastian Vettel in the second Ferrari was in P10 due to a technical problem in Q3. The 19-year-old English rookie Lando Norris started in P5 with the Iceman Kimi Räikkönen in P6. Leclerc had a great start and Verstappen got off the line okay until a big problem occurred. The Honda engine was fast and reliable, but the mapping for a great start was a work in progress. The engine went into anti-stall and Verstappen dropped back to P8 behind his teammate Pierre Gasly. The rest of the grid went through the first lap without any issues, with Norris and Hamilton having a nice little scrap. Vettel made it into P6 after a great start with Verstappen behind him, who had passed his teammate Gasly. Vettel then passed Norris on the straight, making it seem like the McLaren was standing still. Now this is what I talked about earlier. In the 2014 regulations, a maximum of 100 kilograms of fuel was set, but it also had to be used at an instantaneous rate. This prevented the engines from having a boost burning more fuel to gain more power. The amount of fuel being used was measured by a fuel flow meter, and allegedly Ferrari had found a way around that, which gave them an advantage. Later in the season, when the FIA arranged changes to the systems of all the teams on the grid, Ferrari's pace dropped off significantly. So even if Ferrari wasn't found guilty of any wrongdoing, the loss of speed tells you the truth. In any case, in Austria Ferrari had a big advantage on the straights and acceleration out of the corners. which was clear when Vettel overtook Norris. Then it was Max's turn to try and overtake his buddy Lando. He came on the radio with a request.
I need more power, mate. It's scripting a lot.
Asking for more power meant that the team could instruct a driver to set the engine to a more aggressive mapping, to give the engine more power, which was very helpful in a race where a driver has a lot of cars to overtake. These modes were dubbed party modes by Lewis Hamilton once, and that name stuck. In 2020, party modes were banned and the teams had to use the same mapping for qualifying and the race. Turning down an engine to protect it was still allowed during races. Max Verstappen made little work of overtaking Norris and continued on to tick off the next driver on the overtake list, spurred on by the Orange Army. Amazing to see a crowd like that, who supported a driver who isn't in a title fight. Kimi Raikkonen was ahead of Verstappen in lap 9 of 71, and with the difference in pace between the Alfa Romeo and the RB15, there wasn't much of a fight, but it was an overtake nonetheless. Max Verstappen was in a no man's land for a bit there, 14 seconds behind Leclerc, and in this period it became clear that Lewis Hamilton was having some sort of issue. He was struggling to keep the car on track and his tyres were degrading badly. Then the pit stop round started, with Bottas diving in first and Vettel quickly following. But guess what? Ferrari didn't have the tyres ready. Classic Ferrari this. In lap 31, Lewis Hamilton came in for a new wing, as that was the cause of his troubled pace. Leclerc had already pitted earlier, which put Verstappen in the lead briefly. But he did still need to pit, which he did, and it brought him out in front of Hamilton and behind Vettel, Bottas and Leclerc. So it was game on. Charles Leclerc was comfortably at the front, setting the fastest lap. Lap 48. Max Verstappen sets after Sebastian Vettel with his DRS open. Ferrari with that straight line advantage, but Red Bull with a better car. Max braked just a little later, putting him closer to the Ferrari. Verstappen applied more pressure going into turn 4 after the second DRS zone. It looked like he was going to try it down the inside, but stayed behind to set himself up for the next DRS zone. After turn 4 he was close enough and neatly passed the German, sending the orange crowd nuts. Then another setback. Some sensors on Max's car were giving him grief, and Engineer GP and Verstappen had a bunch of settings that needed to be set to get the car going properly again.
Fail 3, fail 0, 3, fail when you can.
What?
Fail 3, fail 0, 3, fail.
After that he was able to chase Valtteri Bottas, and that looked to be another mighty battle, as the Mercedes was the dominant car that season. It was very important for the Dutchman to make light work of it, to be able to attack Leclerc for the win. It turned out not to be that hard at all to pass the ideal wingman. He just set the overtake up before turn 3, stepped on the brake later and passed the Finn. With 15 laps to go, Max Verstappen had little time to grab the win from his opponent from Monaco. 5 laps before the end, Leclerc gets the radio that Verstappen is 1 second behind.
Verstappen behind 1 second.
Leave me alone.
That didn't make Leclerc very happy. Some defensive driving from Leclerc made sure Verstappen couldn't pass him straight away. It would take a lot more to beat the Ferrari prodigy. On lap 68, Max throws the car on the inside and it looked like he had done the move. However, Ferrari had that little trick up their sleeve that made the car so much better on traction and acceleration. Leclerc came out of the corner on the outside and blasted in front of Verstappen again. What could Max do to overtake and keep the position? Next lap. Here we go once more. In a replica of the move in turn 3 a lap earlier, Verstappen does the same thing again. Leclerc knows what's coming and knows what he has to do. But Max was even closer this time and decided to make the move stick by letting the car go wide, giving the Ferrari a little rub. As Karun Chandok likes to say, rubbing is racing. This time the move is done as Leclerc went off track and lost time. I admire Max so much for that move. To be able to conjure up that move in your mind and then execute it in such a brilliant fashion was incredible. This is what makes him unique. Of course, it started a debate if the move was fair, and the stewards were asked to look at it. Was Verstappen alongside far enough to make it his turn? Even if a penalty was given, the racing was magnificent. and it was all down to Max Verstappen overcoming all these obstacles. The radios were gold as well. Verstappen felt Leclerc turned in on him, but GP shut that down immediately.
Here's Verstappen.
He turned in on me.
Mate, there was nothing wrong with that, mate. Nothing wrong with it.
Leclerc couldn't believe what just happened.
What the hell is that?
In any case, the stewards didn't feel the need to penalise Verstappen for his move, and that was along the lines of what drivers wanted from the FIA. An opportunity to race without them killing it all the time. Max Verstappen won, Leclerc was second and Bottas was third. This made the Honda boss very happy, as their engines hadn't won a race in 27 years. It was the start of something very beautiful, as we all know. Now, why do I feel this particular race defines Max Verstappen? Well, to me it just shows that at times like this, no matter what gets thrown at Verstappen, he manages to squeeze out that win. A bad start, a technical issue, overtaking dominant cars, and using a masterful and clever, risky strategy to make the last overtake stick is what made him win that race against all odds. I see other drivers his age race for wins and make huge errors. I see renowned drivers getting close to a win, but just not making it in the end and settling for a second place. But not Max Emilian Verstappen. He saw, he came, and he conquered. This is the reason why I think he'll win the 2024 and the 2025 championships. His ability to win races he shouldn't have actually won makes him impossible to beat in similar cars. We should enjoy this while it lasts, because the cards will be shaken for 2026 and the order will change. For now, the competition is getting closer, but I don't see anyone else on the grid with this absolute determination and grit. This is why I am a huge Max fan, and I hope you see his qualities too. Subscribe. Take care now. Doei doei.